on external. Yeah. So
Yeah,
we'll finish
no
it by
problem.
10:30 because 3-4 of them have another class at 10:30 now. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Am I visible now?
Yeah, perfect. I think it's very clear. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Just give us a minute. Harini, shall we go online? Okay. Okay. Good morning.
We're
On
live.
behalf of the Global Politics course at NIAS, let's welcome Dr. Manoharan, who has been studying Sri Lanka for the last many years. His PhD was on Sri Lanka, and he has been one of the renowned scholars on Sri Lanka in India, and he's also close to us. Close to he's a friend of the course, if I may say, and we are grateful to him for agreeing to spend the morning with us discussing the latest development in Sri Lanka relating to the 20th Amendment. Let's welcome Manoharan, Dr. Manoharan. Manohar, thanks for joining us for this discussion and talk to our students on Sri Lanka. We welcome you. Let's start with the first question, Mano. Uh, what is the salience and the importance of the 20th Amendment? It's because the government has just come in and has started this. Have this been thought through? Has there been enough discussion in the parliament? What is the significance of this 20th Amendment? That's the first question to you.
Okay, okay. Anyway, at the outset, I must thank the very initiative that you people are doing. I think, frankly, this is a good mode of learning, the way that you have thought about. So thanks for that. Just to quickly go to the question, yeah, the year is 2020, and you have IPL going on 2020, and there is a 20th Amendment here. So just briefly on the salient features, if you recollect that we did a event in early August where we clearly said that what government was going to do about it. So one of the predictions, or one of the things that we saw, that was not the great prediction, we saw it was coming, was the repeal of 19th Amendment. The 19th Amendment was all about, so this is where we need to understand. If you want to understand 20, you have to cross 19. So that is where the significance of understanding 20. But if you want to understand 20 better, you have to understand 17 and 18 and then 19. So I'll just briefly touch them. Then I think you will get a clear perspective of what 20 is all about. 20 is nothing but you tampering with 17, 18, and 19. Simple. So you know that this is the amendment, 20th Amendment is to 1978 Constitution. Earlier you had 1972 Constitution, and earlier you had 1947 Constitution. But the present Constitution is 1978 Constitution, and this amendment is in that Constitution. So 17, there are a lot of amendments. The famous amendment is 13th Amendment, which will come later. The 17th Amendment, all along, President was enjoying a lot of power. The then president, the first president, Jayawardena, used to say that president can do anything in Sri Lanka except changing a man to woman. This much power the president used to enjoy. Then 17th Amendment in 2001, it diluted presidential powers on various things, especially on this power to appoint certain commissions. And they introduced what was known as Constitutional Council, which means the Constitutional Council, the membership involves both the parliamentarians and the civil society people. So that had a kind of credibility to appoint independent commissions. There were 9 commissions which were outlined, like Election Commission, Police Commission, Human Rights Commission, Finance Commission, Public Service Commission, and it goes on like this, 9 commissions. This was in 2001. If you remember, 2000 was one where Ranil Wickremesinghe came to power as Prime Minister, and that is when the peace process with the LTT started in 2001, 2, 3, like that it went on. Then in 2005, Rajapaksa came to power. This went on for some time, and 2010, they introduced 18th Amendment. They wanted to actually dilute the 17th Amendment, which actually diluted presidential powers. They wanted to bring the presidential powers back. So 18th Amendment was all about making once again the president as the prima donna or the supreme the supreme force in the politics of Sri Lanka or governance of Sri Lanka. So what happens? They removed Constitutional Council, which had a lot of independence in appointing certain commissions. They replaced that with Parliamentary Council, which means it was packed only by the parliamentarians, not the civil society or the independent or the expert people. And that's why there is a lot of politicization in the appointments. That is where you must have heard about the commissions, the corruption and things like that. And it also restored what was known as the presidential term from 5 years to 6 years. And 17th Amendment, which brought two-term restrictions to the president, it also did away with. The 18th Amendment did away with two-term restriction, and also it extended the president's whatever the tenure to 6 years. This went on for 5 years. When Mahinda Rajapaksa lost elections in 2015, the Ehapalania or the good governance government, so-called the Ehapalania government, which took over in 2015, the president was Sirisena and the prime minister was Ranil Wickremesinghe, but they both belong to two different parties. This is very important point to note. They both belong to different parties, and they brought in what was known as 19th Amendment. Basically, they wanted to actually replace the 18th Amendment. This was the 19th Amendment context. It was called as the most democratic and progressive amendment, but we need to little bit go into nuances of it. Was it really a democratic and progressive amendment is what we need to see. All these I need to say because without all these contexts, we cannot get 20th Amendment. So 19th Amendment provisions I can divide into two categories. One is the non-personal amendments, the non-personal provisions, and other is personal provisions. This is where the problem is. You need to get 20th Amendment properly. The non-personal amendments, for instance, right, where it says that it diluted presidential powers. So whatever ministerial appointments, if president needs appointments, once again, it went to the Constitutional Council. The Parliamentary Council, which was provided by the 18th Amendment, now they restored what was Constitutional Council, which was there in the 17th Amendment, which means, once again, as I told you, the parliamentarians and the civil society experts are part of this particular Constitutional Council for appointments of these 9 independent commissions. And one important provision also they added was the president was liable for prosecution for any commissions or omissions that he committed under fundamental rights petitions. Anybody can file fundamental rights. This is not there in Indian Constitution. This is there in this war. This is there even now in the Sri Lankan Constitution, where anybody can file the fundamental rights petition against presidents any of these actions or inactions. This is what it is. But it goes on like this. This is the non-personal provisions. But there were personal provisions. This is where the issue comes here. This is where we need to get 20th Amendment right. So it restricted personal provisions. I'm calling this as personal provisions. Why I am calling this as personal provisions. It's my own term, but I'll tell you why I'm calling this. It restricted presidential terms to 2 and the tenure as 5, which means it was restoring the 17th Amendment, but it was keeping in mind Mahinda Rajapaksa, that once again Mahinda Rajapaksa should not come back. So this was the context. Second provision was, I'll just identify only 3 provisions that is there that was there in the 19th Amendment. They also said no dual citizenship. Whoever wants to contest presidential election, they should not be a dual citizenship, which means Mahinda Rajapaksa's brother Basel and Gotabaya hold dual citizenship. They were both American and Sri Lankan citizenship, which is also not available in Indian case. And it also said the minimum age to contest a president was 35 years, which means they were actually also keeping this provision to target. I'm using word target because that is what actually happened, to target Mahinda Rajapaksa's son, Namal Rajapaksa. So basically, the personal provisions was making sure 19th Amendment, the personal provisions were actually making sure that any of the family members shouldn't be bouncing back as the president. This was the context. So there were two parts. So now 20th Amendment, understanding 20th Amendment is going to be very simple because it's all about throwing out the 19th Amendment, especially this personal provisions. So which means they restored the 35 years age group limitation to 30 and dual citizenship gone in 20th Amendment. But interestingly, this is where we need to give some kind of credit to them, where they retain this 2 5-year term provisions. But can we actually appreciate Rajapakshas for this? I don't know. It's up to us how we can see that. The thing is, this is how I see, or how this is how I analyze, because there are three brothers and there is one son. There are a lot of Rajapaksha family. So even if they take 5-year term two times, the family can rule for 50 years, 100 years. So fine. This maybe they wanted to convey a message that we actually retain. We are not for personal interest. We have retained this 5-year tenure and 2 term. That is what possible. But if you want to look at positively, they retained it. Fine. You can use this as a leverage. You can always use it. But in terms of other things, so 20th Amendment did away with what was known as the Constitutional Council. It brought back the parliamentary kind of the council, where only parliamentarians needs to be involved. But there is a little bit positive here. This is inserted in 41A, Article 41A, which says that there are 5 members. Out of that, one should be the Prime Minister, Speaker, Leader of the Opposition. These are the 3 people. And then two more people could be nominees. One nominee from Prime Minister and one nominee from Leader of the Opposition. But here, the amendment clearly says these 2 nominees should belong to the community other than the 3 people who were the Prime Minister, Speaker, or Leader of the Opposition, which means they indirectly say that it could be one from Muslim community, one from Tamil community, could be part of this particular parliamentary council. We can always argue like this. This is how it is argued at the back of the 20th Amendment. But the problem now is, when it comes to appointment, it is by majority. Parliamentary council, it is by majority, which means the 3 people belonging to one community, Prime Minister, Speaker, and Leader of the Opposition, if they gang up together, they can appoint anybody. But there is one more problem here. Parliamentary council, despite all these provisions, doesn't have power, which means it clearly says, 41A clearly says in the 20th Amendment that President can appoint, but Parliamentary Council can just observe. It can give only observations. It doesn't have any power. Earlier, 19th Amendment clearly says that President cannot appoint unless Constitutional Council confirms this. Something like how US Senate confirms, right, whatever appointments by the President. So this is one. Second, this is the second provision in the non-personal. Personal provisions I already told you. Then the legal immunity is back, which means any of the commissions or omissions by the president cannot be challenged in any court of law. This is also there. And then certain independent commissions like Audit Service Commission, National Procurement Commission, all these are abolished. Then one more provision, very important, is earlier 19th Amendment said that President cannot dissolve a parliament up to 4 years of its tenure. But 20th Amendment says after 1 year, parliament can be dissolved by the president, which means, like for instance, you take this happened during Chandrika's time also. This is a big tussle that we need to actually analyze when we go into implications, which means if suppose now SLPP is having majority, next time the president is from SLPP and the parliament changes to different party, the president has power to dissolve that parliament after 1 year. He can just bite his teeth and wait for 1 year, but after some time he can dissolve and he can order for elections. This is another problem.
Thank you.
And one more dangerous provision was 19th Amendment gave the limitations on the number of cabinet ministers to 30 and deputy ministers to 45. This has been dropped, which means president can appoint n number of people, which means he can actually create a spoil system, not the system that is spoiled, but spoil system. You know what the concept is. He can appoint n number of people and he can actually appoint anybody as ministers, right? And he can take any portfolio for himself, and he can allocate any portfolio for anybody. It is the discretion of the president. Then presidents also, this is very important to note when it comes to implication later, when it comes to minorities, president can actually reserve any bill for referendum for the people. Suppose tomorrow, we will see that tomorrow some ethnic issue, some bill comes, parliament passes, but president can actually, if he is not satisfied, he can actually reserve it for referendum. You know what will happen if referendum happens on an ethnic issue. And interestingly, this is very important to note. Interestingly, you can look at positively or negatively. The amendment says president is responsible to the parliament, which you can say, oh, this is a very good provision, which means president is always responsible to the parliament, which means whatever parliament say, he is actually has to listen. But it is not like that. It adds, one new provision is added, that as per the constitution, which means you have to read this provision along with other provisions, which means constitution also spelled that out, that president is supreme and he has this power, this power. When you read along with that, it says you can deduce that president is not at all responsible to the parliament. It is the other way around, right? This is how these are the main provisions. I couldn't go into details because it is a 40-page
I
40-page kind of document.
understand. No?
But these are the main salient provisions that we need to know.
No, thank you for that detailed note on that the futures of the amendment, and also thank you for comparing it with the 17, 18, and 19. It gives a historical perspective and it makes us to understand it better. Now I'll request Rashmi. Rashmi is following Sri Lanka as a part of our course in the class. Rashmi, you want to pose a question to Dr. Manoharan?
Yes, sir. I have two questions. First of all, thank you for your detailed insight on the amendment. My first question is about the government appointing the 9-member committee to look into the concerns that were posed by the various civil society organizations or the opposition, to look into the provisions of the amendment and see if there are any changes that they can make. So what are these changes exactly? And without mentioning those changes, I think the government tabled the 20th Amendment already in the parliament. That's my first question. My second question is
Can I finish
the
that
Attorney
question
General
if it
said
is
that
not
there's no need for
Rashmi?
referendum because this is a part of the okay.
Rashmi, if it
Sure,
is not
sure.
related, if they are related, you can go ahead with that question. Another question. If it is not related, let me finish this question.
Go ahead.
If they are related, you go ahead. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, Rashmi, finish the question.
Okay.
Okay, so my second question was with regards to the referendum part and the Attorney General mentioning that there's no need for referendum because the amendment was a promise made in the election campaign, and the mandate itself is a referendum that people agree to the election campaign and the promises they had made.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you. Mano?
First, yeah.
Mano,
First,
briefly, Mano, we have a few more questions.
Yeah. I wish I have to be briefly, but anyway, fine. You can cut me off whenever you wanted to. Okay, right. So first, as far as the committee is concerned, see, this issue has been referred to since this has been gazetted on 2nd September. This has already been gazetted. So you cannot do anything about it. Revision cannot happen at this stage. It can only happen at the parliamentary stage. When they are actually discussing at the parliamentary stage, revision can happen. It cannot be touched now since government has gazetted it on 2nd of September. This is number one. Second is in terms of referendum. This is where political history of Sri Lanka is. Political history of Sri Lanka is its politico-legal history. Political legal history here means that if you see from the post-independence time, whatever the mandates or elections the governments came to power, it was based on the laws or constitutions or amendments or repealing of those amendments or repealing of those constitutions. This is also like that. Yes, it was mandated. People gave mandate, but we need to understand something here. People gave mandate because they wanted the political instability. That is where there was a justification where 19th amendment was questioned because or the but SLPP questioned the 19th amendment in the form of giving weak leadership, paralysis in governance, political instability, right? All kinds of things they targeted, and they made sure that 19th amendment was responsible for that. But actually it was not. It was not. In terms of the spirit, the 19th Amendment was called as the most democratic and progressive in terms of the letter and spirit. But the way it was implemented, the way it was taken was a problem. Somehow, unfortunately, these two parties or the two leaders couldn't come together, maybe because of their personal interests or something like that, you can say so. They couldn't implement. But 19th Amendment per se, we cannot fault, but it was not implemented properly. That is where the problem lies. And that is where the mandate was. This is where people gave mandate, but we cannot read mandate wrongly. This is my argument. Don't read mandate wrongly. Don't think that people gave mandate for you to throw out 19th Amendment. It is not.
Thank you, Mano. I will take two more questions in a row. Lokendra Sharma and Akriti, can you pose your questions to Dr. Mano?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll go first. So thank you, sir, for the talk. And I have two questions. First, whether the 20th Amendment would lead to the revival of TNA. And secondly, do you foresee a power struggle happening within the Rajapaksha family, given that Gothbaya is now going to become more powerful, like assume more power now?
Sure. Akriti, do you have a question?
Yes, sir. So, sir, why is there a internal political divide on this issue, on the Sinhalese aspirations?
Okay, internal means among the Sinhalese, you mean?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Any other questions?
No, sir.
We will take in the next round, Manu. Go ahead.
Okay, right. So I'll take this internal power struggle, the latest question first. If you look at what is going on now, both within the parliament and outside the parliament, the opposition has taken this as an issue and they are protesting. But they are very weak. Irrespective of all those things, government will go ahead and government has the numbers to pass this. That is one. But it is not right to say that there is no internal disagreement. Even SLPP, even within SLPP, there are disagreements on the 20th Amendment. The way it is going, because a section of SLPP feel that this is going to actually empower the Rajapaksha clan. So this is something we need to understand. But outside the party or outside the parliament, there are a lot of resentments, both among the minorities, among the opposition, there is. So even section of Sinhalese are divided, but you have to wait for the division to manifest itself later. Now people are silent. It has not become a mass movement now. But later, if there is any mess up that goes on, if the present regime, both president and prime minister, misuses this 20th Amendment like they did from 2005 to 15, then it may spill into a kind of Sinhalese divide or the Pan Sinhala movement, something like that. It may happen. For the next 1 year, nothing will happen. Okay, so then the next is about the power struggle within the family. As of now, nothing is happening, and I don't see we have seen anything like that happening in the past 20 years in the family. That is where I am arguing that the family could have actually gone slow on certain provisions, in the sense that they could have been, like, in terms of presidential, prime minister could have stayed as powerful. How does it matter? 19th Amendment, in terms of weak president, powerful prime minister, they could have stayed because Mahinda Rajapaksa is prime minister, he is president, it doesn't matter. because power is going to be anyway going to be vested within the family. Through that, they could have got a lot of brownie points from the people, from the international community. But some, I don't know, they must be thinking in a different manner. They must be thinking that tomorrow some other different prime minister would come, something like what Rajapaksa, Chandrika was facing the issue. Even Rajapaksa was facing the issue. Even Sirisena was facing the issue, because there was a different prime minister. They called it as a cohabitation. There was a problem in cohabitation. Usually, this is a French model. This is a French model they followed. Whenever there is opposition party's president, opposition party prime minister, there is a problem in cohabitation. Maybe they are foreseeing that. So they wanted to make a single guy as president, because he can be more reliable. Otherwise, if you make prime minister as more powerful, he had to rely on parliament, and there will be a lot of dissensions and things like that. So that is a problematic variable there. So that is how perhaps they must have calculated politically. This is what it is. As of now, I don't see any political struggle, or in the near future, I don't see any political struggle coming, unless otherwise somebody goes and create wedges within the family. Then the question about the revival of TNA. I don't see any revival of TNA because of 20th Amendment. For something else, if they want to take this as a particular ethnic issue and bringing Tamil rights in the forefront, then fine. But because of 20th Amendment, TNA coming to actually reviving itself, I don't see it. But it all depends on how they are going to take it. But as you see, as long as Sambandhan is there, fine. Now TNA itself, the recent parliamentary elections clearly showed that TNA was so weakened, because people from there, they split and they formed different parties. Some joined even government, some they joined opposition, and it is very weak. And there are certain militant section of the Tamil actually polity that is taking up the issue. So TNA challenging them and militantly taking the issue, Tamil issue, is going to be a big problem. I don't see TNA getting revived because of actually 20th Amendment. But if they rethink on the way they are functioning, if they get unity among all the Tamil polity, then there could be revival of TNA, because TNA itself is an alliance, Tamil National Alliance. It is not a party, right? So it is an alliance. So if they revive and renew certain things, certain modes of working, then there is a possibility.
Thank you. Now, then the next set of questions, let's look into the external aspects. Saurina? I know we'll take three questions together, maybe Saurina and Abigail together.
Sir.
Yeah. Good. I think.
Was muted. So muted. Sir, the first question is, thank you. My first with regard to India, how do you see India viewing what's happening in Sri Lanka, especially with regard to the 13th amendment, which was the core for the Indo-Sri Lankan Accord? So that's my first question.
One question. Okay. Right.
Along the same lines, what has been the response of the international community as well as international institutions, such as namely the US, EU, Norway, and with regard even to the UNHCR? And what could be the possible implications of this amendment on Sri Lanka's external relations or foreign policy?
Okay. Both are very interesting questions. All right. So firstly, let's take the India factor. We have couple of issues with Sri Lanka, and one of the major issue is this particular ethnic issue. The other issue being the China factor. Then you have fishermen issue, but fishermen issue will leave it. But it may touch two other factors: the China factor, or role of external actors in Sri Lanka that is inimical to Indian interest, and then the ethnic issue. So 20th Amendment may actually impact on these two issues. First is on the ethnic issue, of course, because the president is powerful and they have the government, they have the numbers. They may be tempted to lay hands on the 13th Amendment, which actually Rajapaksa did. If you remember, he was talking in terms of 13th Amendment plus, the 13th Amendment minus, that kind of thing he was talking. Now, since he has numbers, he also has his everything. Whatever he want to do, he can always do. He may be tempted to do, but I am not sure he has guts to do, because that may actually try and earn ire of India, earn the anger of India. So they will be very cautious to do anything directly. But the regime may do something indirectly, which means they may not amend the 13th, the so-called 13th Amendment, but they may dilute the 13th Amendment indirectly in terms of, it's already happening in terms of finances, in terms of appointing governors, in terms of making sure that the 13th Amendment doesn't function properly in the North and East. So which means the letter and spirit may not actually be followed, 13th Amendment, and we may be busy with a lot of other things, US, China, and Pakistan. So we may not be that much bothered with Sri Lanka. So this is what the implication. But if they stretch too far, if they cross the Rubicon beyond this 13th Amendment minus, then I think India may go and tell them that enough is enough. This is possibility. But as I see, Rajapakshas are smart enough to play, right? They may play, and they may, all they have to do is they wanted to just keep things as it is. They may actually delay things. They may keep like this only. We have been talking about this political solution for the past more than 30 years. Nothing happened. Nothing is going to happen. This is as far as India factor. Then China. In terms of China, yes, now you know the orientation and the comfort factor between Rajapakshas and China. China may be involved a bit more in a more confident manner. You can also have to take into consideration the Sri Lanka's economic condition. So given all these things, the China's role maybe with bit more confidence we can see. And still, if they keep it within a particular confines, fine. If it crosses, then yeah, then the India-Sri Lanka relations may get into kind of irritating kind of mode. This is as far as India factor is concerned. Then you're talking about the international community. This is very important, where I see in two manners. One is in terms of how, because of 20th Amendment, they are actually making a particular institutions very powerful. Here, there are three pillars of government: legislature, executive, and judiciary. But here, executive is becoming very, very powerful because of 20th Amendment, and actually snubbing the other two pillars, which actually violates what is known as Commonwealth Latimer House principles. This actually, people have actually raised voice. Now they may actually get into the attention of Commonwealth if they try and undermine after 20th Amendment the other two the pillars. So this is number one. As a result, they may get into bad books of Commonwealth, something like Pakistan, Maldives, Malaysia, something like it can happen to Sri Lanka also. This is as far as their relations. And they may not be that comfortable with the United States, European Union, all these may happen. Now, United Nations, you already know that in February or January, Sri Lanka clearly told that we are not going to follow this resolution 31. We are not going to follow. So, which means they are not going to keep up any kind of promise as far as their commitment to human rights or the reconciliation or post-conflict, whatever, rebuilding, all those things. They clearly said we are not going to abide by. And as a result, countries may gang up against Sri Lanka in the UN. But you know, there are countries to bail that out. So this is what perhaps may pan out like this. Yeah. I overshot time.
Just okay. One last question, Mano. From based on what we have discussed so far, the sense that I gather is this amendment will make the president as a strong institution. Yeah. Now, the point is, we think, you also refer to the three pillars. The last few years in particular, especially after that horror attacks in the Easter attacks, one of the primary debate within Sri Lanka is that the government didn't take strong actions. That you wanted a strong leader. That was, in a way, even the election campaign was looking at, creating a strong leadership. So my question on this is, if the nation is looking at a strong leadership, because it is the lack of that strong leadership that failed Sri Lanka in the last couple of years, the divide between the president and the prime minister. So how would you see the 20th Amendment in this backdrop? The earlier experience of having the legislature and the president not providing what Sri Lanka would have wanted. How would you equate that? I hope you get the question.
Yeah. So what you are right. Yes, people gave mandate for two things. One is to avoid instability and bickerings among the leaders, and second is in terms of the strong leadership the country needed at this juncture to stabilize both security and economy. You are right. But unfortunately, what 20th Amendment gives is not leadership, but a boss. This is a problem. You know the difference between leader and a boss. So 20th Amendment is giving a boss, or in the pretext it is giving a leader, but the leader is, if it leader is going to be turned as a boss, then nothing is going to be solved, including security. Because in that sense, what happens? There was a strong leader from 2005 to 2015. But that is when the whole radicalization happened in the eastern part. The Islamic radicalization happened because of this particular so-called strong leadership, where the leadership looked the other way when things were going on between the radical Sinhala polity and the Islamic polity. As a result, what happened? The moderate Islamic polity could not hold this militant polity with them. So as a result, the Islamic militants, they went and then they did whatever we saw. They did that gory acts. And same thing may happen. All we need at this juncture is a statesman in Sri Lanka, not a boss. That is what, as simple as that. So as a result, this I think I was telling this in the other day also in our previous seminar. Two other communities, Sri Lankan Tamil community and you have Indian plantation Tamil community. The radicalization touched two other communities, but is yet to touch Indian plantation community. But if it goes on like this, it may touch plantation community also. And in that sense, Sri Lanka had to handle three radicalizations together. This is a problem. This is a problem. I don't see, because for maintain security, you don't need a strong leader. All you need is a strong institutions. You need to have inclusiveness. You need to address grievances in a proper manner. Then you can set up security. Otherwise, it is going to be difficult.
Okay. Thank you, Mano, for spending almost 35 minutes with us. I think we looked quite deep into the amendment, and then you explained the amendment in a historical and also constitutional perspective. Thank you very much for spending the time. I sincerely hope that some of the other questions that we may want to address, for example, the minority question, what it means, we didn't delve in deeply into it. And also the last point that you addressed, the national coherence, whether 20th Amendment will bring the national coherence within. Maybe at a later time, we will come back to you. I sincerely hope you will find time.
Sure. Yeah, always pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you again.
All the best
for joining us. We'll come back.
All the best to all. Do well. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.